The role of Investaflex, I think, was almost right from the beginning as an idea generator, and that was really good. I mean, that got us going, and we enjoyed that free flow of ideas. And then I think it sort of moved from that into the actual project coordinator as the project became more defined, and Investaflex then became the project coordinator for all of what we were needing to do. And then ultimately, of course, that made the financial objectives that we had clear to ourselves, because it wasn't always totally clear at the initial, and then it also created everything in place that was needed. So I think to some extent the role morphs a little bit as we go along through the process. The innovative restructuring gave due consideration to every family involved, and I think that was very important, especially as we look historically at it, but even at the time, to begin to recognize that it wasn't a one-family business, but it was rather a family business with multiple families involved, and that was a very important process that really has created a good foundation as we go forward with the business. Investaflex was much more innovative, much more well-rounded, willing to look at a lot of different issues rather than just financial or just a succession planning aspect of it, but rather a much more holistic picture. I think Investaflex's role has been both to give advice, but also to help us in networking with other advisors, other professionals. This isn't something that I think, at least at this point, we don't think there's any one place we can go to for the answers. So the role of Investaflex there was especially in helping our networking. We weren't aware of all of the different potential resources available in the area of corporate governance and succession planning, and all of these areas required professionals in everything from psychology through to leadership in business and all sorts of areas that we're in some sense still exploring. And Investaflex has worked very well as the hub that helps to bring all of these together for us. Some of the meetings right here, as well as in some cases just guiding us to the right resource. Our families weren't exactly sure how to go about all the charitable gifting that we wanted to do, and well, first of all, there was a lot of money freed up from the tax man, which was great, that we could then feel free to give away. But it also we obtained a structure through the work with Investaflex that gave each family some independence to pursue what each particular family wanted to do in philanthropic areas. And I think that was very important as well. There's some things we want to do all together, as all the families together in the business, but there's also, each family has to have their independence in this area too. And the structure has worked well for that. In trying to pursue our charitable gifting intent, we were introduced to, we had some ideas about foundations, but we were really introduced to all of the options in foundations through Investaflex, and we were actually able to, through your work, through the Investaflex's work, we were able to actually set up a structure with a public foundation, or rather than having to set up our own private foundation, and that worked extremely well in terms of both achieving our objectives and I think being very cost effective. Investaflex has given us very good value for the money. I mean, it's always a good place to start. Compared to some accounting firms and others that we have dealt with. I think also very well focused on long-term objectives, which is important. We're not having to so much come back to the same issue again and again as we found we were having to do with certain accounting firms. Instead, things have been well worked through because the long term was taken into consideration in the planning, a lot more so than we saw with the typical accounting firm. Business succession is something that tends to grow and as the company is growing, and as the families themselves go through various phases, you know, what may be seen as succession at one time may not be everything that's needed at another time. So it is something that has to be revisited to some extent in the same way as corporate governance also. And at least if it's a growing, healthy enterprise, there's going to be a need to revisit these matters. But the more the foundational work has been done well, the easier it is to build a solid structure on it. I think we've had, anytime we call up, we get as much help as we ask for. So, I think we've even been given, you know, things before we're even to that stage, just as sort of, oh, something to think about. And, oh, yes, it is. So I think very proactive as well as very helpful at every stage. I think simply that you also have found good companies to work with. And so when we're working with Investaflex, we're also working with other good supporting companies. And I think that's an important thing. It's, we find the same in our industry too. It's not simply the one product, it's the whole package of products and services that we're confident that we get good quality all the way through.